Hello everyone, this is Lam here. In today's video, I want to talk about vlogging with the X-T3. This is something that I've been doing for a couple of weeks now, and so I have some feedback for you if you're interested in using this camera as a vlogging camera or a hybrid camera, because it is really good for that. There's a lot to talk about, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. The first thing that I do want to talk about is what is vlogging, because there's a variety of different definitions out there, so I want to tell you mine before I actually start talking about the camera itself. Vlogging for me is kind of like an updated version of a diary. It's not going to be well scripted. It's not supposed to fit perfectly together. It's supposed to be real. It's supposed to be authentic, although I hate to use the word. It's something that you would do on a daily basis that's trying to capture the actual moment. So I'm not really talking about trying to script out the entire screen, doing all of this incredible grading. I really want to portray this is what it looked like in the moment when I was actually capturing that video. So that's my interpretation of a vlog, and for me this camera does it well. Now, having said all of that, let's talk about the big items. First and foremost is the Fuji colors. A lot of people have started talking about it. If you haven't noticed, these cameras are starting to fly off the shelves. They are starting to go into back order, which is super cool because people are finding out these cameras are really good. A lot of it has to do with the color science of the Fuji cameras. For me, they are the most realistic colors that I could find, and that was what attracted me to these Fuji cameras. When I was looking for a camera system that I could use for my personal use, specifically YouTube content, I found that the Fuji colors were the ones that really stood out to me, and that was number one on my priority list. If that is also high on your priority list, then I think you'll be very happy with the Fuji camera systems. Now, you can't talk about a vlogging camera without talking about the flip out screen or the selfie screen, which this does not have, and that is definitely a detriment. Unfortunately, there's not too many cameras out there that do have selfie screens or flip out screens, and if they do have them, they have other limitations that I just don't want to deal with. So for me, first and foremost, the color was the most important thing. If that was handled, I can live without a selfie screen, and plus, combined with my definition of what vlogging is, I don't need the perfect framing or to script everything out to be very happy with my vlog. So in my case, I'm perfectly happy with not having a selfie screen. Would I love to have one? Yes, I would. What I would say to Fuji on this is that I understand that photographers like the traditional screens. What I would love to see is to have this screen to be more modular, in which I can send this camera into Fuji and they can actually install a selfie screen or a flip out screen. Even if it costs me a little bit more money, I'd be more than happy to do that if that's an option to do that. So that's what I would like to see coming in more camera systems, because I don't think the fight between having a selfie screen or not having a selfie screen, I don't think we're ever going to win that. So I'd rather have the option of just getting one installed on there. I hope camera manufacturers would do something like that. Now that we've talked about the major items, let's go ahead and talk about the ergonomics of the camera. One of the things that I do appreciate about vlogging cameras is that I want them to be small in both size and weight. If I could have it to where it's the size of an X-T20, I definitely would want this. I think this is the perfect size and weight. Unfortunately, right now, the X-T3, the feature set is just so good. I would forego going with the X-T20 as my preferred vlogging camera just because the feature set is so good on the X-T3. Now, having said that, the size and weight isn't really all that bad on the X-T3. It's still very easy to use when you have it fully extended out there. It's still very easy to actually hold steady, so I don't really mind the additional weight of the X-T3. It's actually weighted pretty well, and I'm very happy with it. One of the things that I really love is that the door on the side, you can actually remove it. That way, when you have a microphone over here, you can easily plug it in and then have a small mic like this capture audio for you, and then you can flip it back and forth, making it very easy to capture audio. So definitely having the door off is super nice. It's one of the great features that is very minor, but when you actually start using it in the field, it actually makes a big difference. Another useful convenience when out there running and gunning is having your manual focus, your single and your continuous focus out here in the front, because it's away from other knobs, so it's very easy to find. And then you can intuitively figure out whether or not you're in manual focus, continuous focus, or single focus just by button feel. So that's super useful to me because I do go between continuous focus and manual focus quite a bit when I'm out there taking pictures and taking video. This is by far their best autofocus system right now. The face detection system, the eye detection, single and continuous focus, they all all work super well. It's probably the best that I've used out of all the XT cameras. Plus the phase detection autofocus covers the entire sensor, which means you can get fast focusing pretty much anywhere on the sensor, making it very useful for any type of photo or video needs that you have. When you're out there vlogging with face detect on, it locks onto your face. It doesn't hunt, which means it's a nice video. Even when it's up close to your face, or if you actually move it further away, it doesn't seem to have any problems tracking your face and holding that focus and making sure that your video looks really good. Another minor feature that is super useful when vlogging is the tally light. You can have it to where when you start recording, the tally light or the light up front will actually turn on. This will let you know that you're actually recording. This has saved me a bunch of times when I've noticed the tally light isn't on, which means I'm not recording. So I'm not actually wasting a bunch of time talking to a camera that actually isn't recording. So having this feature is super useful. I would definitely recommend turning it on, especially since we don't have a selfie screen. And this is kind of one of those features that kind of helps you make up for not having a selfie screen. It won't help you do any framing, but at least you'll know you're recording when you're actually doing your vlogs. Now, when it comes to changing your exposure settings, Fuji is kind of old world on this. They like having dials that you can actually use, but if you prefer the DSLR method in which you're using the command dials, you can definitely set that up in the menu settings. So definitely look at that if you prefer the DSLR style of doing it. But I do actually like the dials. They're very easy and they're very intuitive to use, and with the EVF you can figure out your exposure settings pretty easily, so I have no issues with that. Of course, you can set the entire camera to full auto, and in general it does a fairly good job. So if you're somebody who's just new to it and you don't really want to fool around with the camera settings, this camera will take care of you. It will do a pretty nice job at it. But as you learn the camera system, as you learn the dials, you can quickly go over to the manual side or to one of the priorities, and it will do a really good job. Now, one of the things that I wish Fuji would improve upon is to actually implement shutter angle into movie mode. That way you can set it to a specific angle mode. An example of this is that if you set shutter angle to 180, it will always be double your shutter speed, so you never have to worry about it. So basically, if you were to turn on angle mode in video, it would disable the shutter dial, and then it would just go with the angle setting that you set. This would make things a lot easier for us video guys. Hopefully something like that isn't too difficult for Fujifilms to actually implement, but I would really love to see that type of feature in the movie settings. So very quickly, the last thing I do want to talk about are the codecs on the X-T3. As many of you will know, there is 10-bit support on the X-T3, but when you move up to that 10-bit, you do have to move codecs. You have to use the H.265, and that codec is actually very tough on your computers. So one thing that you need to figure out is your computer going to be able to run H.265 on your whatever editing software you have and run it smoothly? Because if it doesn't run in your editing software, then I would recommend not using the 10-bit. 8-bit looks pretty good on YouTube, and I really don't have a problem with it. In fact, I'm recording on 8-bit right now, and then only on my X-T3 am I recording on 10-bit. On the computer that I'm using right now, it does stutter a little bit at times, and it can be very annoying. So just recognize that even though we're getting 10-bit now from the camera system recorded internally, it is very hard on your computers because it's recording to a codec in which the computer has to do a lot of work. But having that inside the camera and being able to choose that is still a very big plus to us vloggers, because it kind of future-proofs this camera a little bit, and that's something that I definitely want in my camera systems. So let's go ahead and talk about the lenses, because obviously the camera body is important, but having the right lenses for vlogging is also super important. And in this case, Fujifilm has us pretty well covered. This one right here is the 18-55. I find it to be an excellent vlogging lens. Over here I have another one. This is the 18-135, so this is their super zoom. So if you're the type that only wants to carry one lens around that can cover many ranges, this is definitely a good lens for you. And then of course we have our ultra wide, which is the 10-24. So if you like carrying around a lens that's super wide angle, this will cover your vlogging needs and your super wide angle needs. So there is quite a few lenses. There's also the 18-50, which is a little plasticky, but some people do prefer this lens. There is also another one, the 18-45. I don't have that one. I haven't tested that one, but it's definitely one that I'm interested in looking into. There's also the 16mm prime lens, which is on my X-H1 right now. On the X-T3, because there is no image stabilization, I would not recommend that lens. It's probably going to be a little bit too jittery for you to use in a vlog. Now, Fuji does have very good lenses, but one caveat to this is that all of these lenses were designed to be photo lenses. The reason why I bring this up is because when the aperture changes on the lens, it's definitely very noticeable in the exposure of your video. So you will actually see a step down in your video in terms of exposure. Say you're actually in shutter priority, you're shooting at 30 frames per second, so you would set this to 1/60th on your shutter dial right here. You would lock that in, and then you would change this over to A, which means that you're going to allow the camera to change the shutter and then the ISO. So you will always be at 1/60th of a second while you're recording your video. This is something that's really important if you want the camera to actually make decisions for you. The only problem is that when it changes the aperture on the lens, it will be a stepping motion, so you will see the exposure. For vlogging purposes, it's not too big of a deal, but if you can get away with not seeing that, it's definitely recommended. And that's really a big byproduct of the lens being a photo lens, in which the aperture is just going to be closing in stops, and it's just not going to be very pretty. Just realize the limitations on that and you'll be good to go. Now, there are a lot of things that I like about the X-T3, but there are certain improvements that I would like to see on this camera. First and foremost, I really wish there was a way to add custom profiles onto the camera systems, and it having 3 camera profiles makes it very easy to use for us hybrid shooters. This is a feature that I wish Fujifilms would address somehow. I know it's a little bit more difficult because of the manual dials that they have. One suggestion that I would have is that if you did have custom profiles, say you went to user 1 or user profile 1, if these locking dials are done, then it should take the settings of the user profile, but the second if this lock dial is actually up, then it would override what's on the user profile and it would change to whatever the knob is. But the second you push it down and you lock it in place, it should default back to what the user profile is. This is one suggestion that I would have. Another suggestion I would have, and this is specific for video, is that when you're actually in manual focus, I wish the AF on would still work while it's still recording. In other words, when you're actually in manual focus, while you're not recording, your AF on does actually focus. So you can actually use single focus when the camera system is actually set to manual focus. But the second you start recording, you can no longer use the AF on button. It no longer works. That's something that I wish you can override in your camera menus, to where even if it's in manual focus, you can still use the AF on button to trigger single focus onto your camera. This would make it very nice for running gunners who wants to be able to get quick focus using their camera system by using the AF on button. This is a very useful feature that's available on the Nikon Z7. It's also available on the Panasonic GH5. It's a great feature and I hope to see it in a firmware update sometime down the line. The last suggestion that I would have actually comes from the X-T20, and it has this little switch right here which allows you to go into full auto. But instead of going to full auto, what I wish to have on the X-T3 is to use a switch like this to go from video mode to camera mode in one step, rather than having it on a command dial over here. So I constantly have to work this dial back and forth. I'd rather have it to where it's actually on its own custom setting. That way it's very simple to go back and forth, and in general it would just make it a whole lot easier for us hybrid shooters. So that is a quick rundown of the X-T3. I definitely enjoy using this camera for all of my vlogging needs. It's a great camera, it's well priced, all of the features on it are pretty good. There is definitely a few things that are missing that I wish they improve upon, but who knows, we might see that in firmware. Right now though, for the price, I don't think you can beat this camera. Definitely check it out if you are a hybrid shooter or if you just like using compact cameras, because this one's hard to beat right now in the market. As always, if you have any questions, please leave it in the comments below. Definitely tell me what you think if you're actually vlogging with your X-T3 right now. I would love to hear your comments. And until next time, thank you so much for watching.